You have certainly pondered the question, why do people fall in love with you? Perhaps it was in the midst of the commotion that accompanied the beginning of a love relationship, or perhaps it was in the silence that followed the end of a love relationship. What exactly is it that captivates people to such a profound degree, sometimes in an irrational manner, and sometimes with a dedication that doesn't even appear to make sense? Is it your personality, your presence, your self-assurance, or even your fragility that makes you vulnerable? Or is it possible that it is something far more profound, something that is not apparent but undeniably powerful, something that has been developing behind the scenes of human consciousness for a very long time? According to Carl Jung, love, or at least the sudden magnetic attraction that disguises itself as love, has very little to do with what is visible and everything to do with what lies buried in both you and them. He believed that love, or true love, is the only thing that can truly be described as love, due to the fact that no one truly falls in love with you, not in the way that you are. They fall in love with what you awaken, and what you awaken has nothing to do with performance. It has to do with the unconscious, and the unconscious is all the time looking for something. Jung was the one who coined the term. When we are unable to find expression within ourselves directly, the unconscious tends to leak outward. People who remind us of what we've lost, denied, or wished for, but never touched, are the ones who are found by it. It finds faces, words, and movements in other people. Something takes place when we come across a person who is a perfect reflection of our own internal image. It seems as though we have known them for an eternity. Without any reason, we have the feeling that we are viewed. There are a few different names for this phenomenon: chemistry, fate, and love. However, the reality is that what we are encountering is a reflection of ourselves that is emanating from them, and they're doing the same thing. It is for this reason why certain interactions feel instant and overwhelming, even when the persons involved are first-time acquaintances. Your soul is not recognizing the individual. Rather, it is identifying the symbol, which is the structure of an inner truth that you have not yet embodied, and which is reflected back to you in the form of another human being. People fall in love with you for a number of reasons. The first of which is that you symbolize something that they have either lost, repressed, or never fully developed inside themselves. You are more than just attractive. You are a symbol for the person who has repressed their feelings and buried them beneath a layer of stoicism. Those who have always been organized and restrained find themselves drawn to the expressive depth that you possess for some reason. When someone who has never allowed themselves to be soft experiences your turmoil, it feels like liberation. When someone else experiences your compassion, it feels like salvation. They do not see you. Rather, they see themselves through the lens of what they could be, what they ought to be, and what they fear they will never be. Moreover, the instant you make your appearance, it is as if their soul is being beckoned forward, not toward you, but toward their own becoming. This is the reason why your presence possesses power that is beyond rational comprehension. You reawaken a possibility that they had believed to be dormant within them. You stir something within them. The contradiction is in the fact that the very thing that attracts people to you is also the thing that they may unconsciously resent. The same fire that drew them in now burns too brightly, and they back away, not because you changed, but because their projection failed. When you demonstrate that you're not just an archetype, but a person with flaws, with inconsistencies, and with limits, the same fire that drew them in continues to burn too brightly. People do not fall in love with you because of who you are, as you can see. Fall in love with the person they hope to become as a result of your influence. And if they are not yet prepared to confront that aspect of themselves, they will withdraw from the relationship. Occasionally, gradually, occasionally abruptly, and occasionally with great force. They're going to point the finger at you and say that you have changed. However, the capability to continue living in the delusion was the thing that truly changed. It is not betrayal that causes pain in that area. Rather, it is the disruption of an illusion that causes it to blossom. This was not something that Jung considered to be a failure. In fact, he believed that this was the fundamental goal of relationships, to bring what is unconscious into consciousness, to use the mirror of love not to flatter the ego, but to face the soul. Therefore, even if the love is extinguished or if they leave, the fact remains that you were a catalyst for the relationship to develop. Rather than failing to be liked, you succeeded in performing a more profound function. Through your actions, you roused a dormant self within them. You ignited the match that their soul had been anticipating waiting for. It was never in your power to determine whether they would take advantage of that spark to shed light on their reality or to destroy their comfort zone. What is important is that you have never been meaningless. You have never been nothing more than a phase. There is a hallowed quality to the fact that you were a symbol in their internal construction. Now, let's have a look at the second reason why something makes someone fall in love with you. You are not a representation of something that they do not have. Rather, you are a match for an unconscious image that they have carried with them throughout their entire existence. This was referred to by Jung as the Anima and the Animus. The feminine principles that are shaped by a man's early encounters with women, particularly his mother, as well as by collective stories and symbols inherited from myth, culture, and the collective unconscious, are what every man carries inside him. This is not a woman, but rather the feminine principles that are shaped by his early experiences with women. Similarly, every woman contains within her an unconscious image of the masculine. This is not a man, but rather the archetypal masculine spirit that is fashioned by the experiences of fathers and the ancient symbolic structures of the psyche. The inner figures in question are not conscious. They are not preferences whatsoever. These are expectations, aspirations, and fears that are deeply ingrained. They are templates that have a powerful emotional punch. One day, apparently out of nowhere, you stumble into the life of another person and become the personification of that picture. You are a perfect fit for the structure. You are, not in terms of how you dress or how you speak, but in terms of who you are at your core. Suddenly, they are completely captivated. People may refer to it as soul recognition. They may experience a link to their former lives or to destiny. The person may say, "I've never felt anything like this before," and they are correct in saying that, since it is not about you. It is about their unconscious mind seeing a long-lost image come to life. It is not because of your personality that they are overcome with emotion at that same time. Rather, it is because of the symbolic role that you suddenly find yourself playing. You are no longer merely a person. Moreover, you have become the container of the most profound vision of love that exists within their mind. However, there's also a risk involved here due to the fact that the anima and animus are not human. They are flawless, holy, and immortal, and no human person could ever hope to live up to a projection that is that enormous for all of eternity. There comes a point in time when the image starts to break. You share something with them that they were not anticipating. You expose a facet of yourself that they... An attempt to avoid the more profound fact that the suffering is not requesting that you forget it. Rather, it is requesting that you remember it. This is not to remember the person, but rather to recall the feelings that they evoked in you. Mostly due to the fact that what they aroused was not theirs to offer, but rather it was yours to reclaim. Through the course of our lives, Carl Jung frequently remarked that we encounter ourselves in 1,000 different guises on a regular basis. A powerful disguise is love, and romantic love in particular. Love is one of the most potent disguises. You're under the impression that it is about them, but it is never about them. Essentially, it is the self that is calling you home, and the self does not communicate through rational thought. Rather, it communicates through feelings of yearning, resonance, aching, quiet, and even, on occasion, sadness. As the depth of love increases, so does the level of introspection that it necessitates. Therefore, the next time someone makes a romantic interest in you, you should question yourself. What are they seeing? Which aspects of their inner world are you attempting to convey? Is it because of projection or admiration? Do you believe in fantasy or connection? What's more essential is whether or not they will continue to love you once the illusion is dispelled, after the archetype is broken down, and after the person comes forth. Due to the fact that if they are unable to love you after the mask is removed, then it was never love. Rather, It was just longing dressed up in magnificent attire. Likewise, the same is true for you. Who are you falling in love with? And more importantly, why are you falling for them? What is it that they motivate you to do? Is this a recreation of love, or is it for real? Because of who they are, or because of who you become when you are in their presence? Do you find yourself pulled to them instead? And if they left tomorrow, what aspect of you would be the one to leave together with them? The answer that you provide is all of me, which indicates that you have not yet individuated. The fact that you are still loving from the wound is not love. Rather, it is survival. You are still loving from the pain. It means that I want you, but I do not require you to finish me off. This is what it means to love from your totality. That I recognize the sacred in you, but that I also recognize your humanity, and that I do not want perfection from you is what it implies. What this implies is that I will not give you the keys to my self-worth and call it intimacy. This is love that is not based on possession, love that does not involve projection, and love that does not involve illusion. It is uncommon since the majority of people are not trained to love in this manner. The vast majority of individuals are instructed to look for themselves in other people, to search for the father they never had, the mother they never met, the savior, the rescuer, and the person who will inevitably remain in their lives. However, unless you stop putting the burden of your unlived existence on the shoulders of another person, you will continue to repeat the same pattern over and over again while making the excuse that it is love. Additionally, this is not your fault. Rather, it is the position that humanity as a whole is in. It is not that we are broken. Rather, we are separate. Love becomes the location where we attempt to piece ourselves back together after we have been broken apart. A true healing, on the other hand, does not occur by fusion. Rather, it occurs through contemplation, through awareness, and through meeting ourselves in the gaze of another person. This is not to merge, but rather to remember. It is not to lose ourselves, but rather to return. It is the waking, the ache, and the blessing all rolled into one experience. There are certain people who are not meant to remain, but everyone is supposed to reveal something. You will no longer be mourning the loss of love. Rather, you will be honoring love that has been fulfilled when you stop clinging to the illusion and begin to embrace the mirror. For the reason that even the shortest experience the most transitory form of romantic attraction. The most heartbreaking conclusion was a mentor, a lesson, and a chapter in your journey back to the person you were before. In addition, the return is the point at which genuine love starts. When you finally stop wondering, why do they love me? You will finally understand. And then proceed to inquire, what aspect of them was looking for itself through me? There is a profound change. You are no longer ensnared in the delusion that love is something that you must earn by being attractive enough, kind enough, or flawless enough. It dawns on you that love, the kind of love that is rooted in the unconscious archetype, was never about superficial characteristics. The key is to have resonance. It's about the story that they've been carrying about inside of them ever since they were children, possibly even since previous lifetimes. Additionally, you were able to match the role in that myth through some unseen choreography of fate and timing. If you were able to play that role effectively, they would be drawn to you. But as soon as you deviated from your usual behavior, the myth was shattered, and the connection was severed as well. It is not your failure. Rather, it is their unconscious awakening to the illusion that it has created for itself. The same is true when you find yourself falling in love. It's not always the fact that you feel that instant tug, that sensation of familiarity, that déjà vu, or that sense of destiny. Sometimes it is the soul that is yelling out, look, there you are, that part of me that has been lost, that picture that has been ignored. You may refer to it as attraction, but in reality, it is a projection. If you want to question yourself, is what I love about them something that I need to develop in myself? You need to have the confidence to do so. This is due to the fact that if you do not, you will continue to be surrounded by the same kind of person. Continue to fall into the same pattern over and over again. It will appear as though you are unlucky in love, but in reality, you are just asleep. Jung's brilliance is at its most penetrating in this particular area. His request was not for you to cease loving. Rather, he requested that you begin to comprehend the revelations that love brings. Instead of putting projection in a negative light, he presented it as a necessary stage on the way to completeness. Mostly due to the fact that we all project. It is how we come to know ourselves. However, only those who are courageous will proceed forward. In order to begin absorbing the source, only those who are courageous will cease following the fiction. When you accomplish this, when you recover the energy, when you regain the image, and when you stop relying on the other person to carry the unrealized potential of your soul, you will begin to transform. You become into a person who does not fall in love simply because someone feels like they are known to you. Someone who meets you in the present moment, without any illusions, is the one who causes you to fall in love. To add insult to injury, the most revolutionary aspect is that once you realize the reasons why others fall in love with you, you begin to exercise that power in a responsible manner. Eventually, you will become aware of the fact that someone is elevating you to a position that you did not request. This is when you start to sense that they are enjoying the concept of you rather than the actual you. When their adulation transforms into control, when their urge to possess derives from their fear of confronting themselves, you are able to see what is going on. And instead of feeding the projection, rather than playing the role, you begin to move out of the illusion in a kind, sincere, and loving manner first. It is you who asserts, "I am not the missing piece. I am not about to save you. No, I am not your imagination. I am a human being. If you continue to choose to love me at this place, then perhaps we might start something that is genuine." This is the threshold that very few people ever cross. That is because it is far simpler to continue to be desired than it is to be known. To continue living in the illusion is more convenient than to run the danger of losing the connection when the truth is revealed. What you safeguard via performance, however, is something you have to pay for with your own being, and at some point, the price becomes unaffordable. You come to the realization that you would rather be unloved for who you truly are than worshipped for a mask that you are no longer able to wear at some time in your life. In addition, when you conduct your life in this manner, when you refuse to be a part of the unconscious story that someone else is perpetuating, you start to attract new people. Those individuals that present themselves in your life at this moment are not drawn to the projection. Rather, they are drawn to your presence. They do not require you to complete them. Rather, they want to travel beside you, to grow alongside you, and to meet themselves on a deeper level through the container of conscious connection. Despite the fact that these connections are less intense and possibly less intoxicating, they're stable, transparent, and profound due to the fact that they are constructed on reality rather than archetype. Individualization, also known as the progression from fragmentation to completeness in love, was the term that Jung used to describe this process. Given that it enables us to reach aspects of ourselves that we would never have the courage to confront on our own, conscious love is one of the most precious instruments that it possesses. Love disrobes us completely. Love forces us to confront our most desperate desires. Love compels us to become. And when it is founded on awareness rather than delusion, the conflict that it brings about is transformed into release. However, the path is not a straight one. You will continue to misstep, you will continue to be captured, and you will continue to be enticed by the myth. It is divine to do that. That is human. The goal is not to prevent projection. Rather, it is to recognize it, to become aware of it as it occurs, to feel the pull, the chemistry, and the spark, and to halt and ask, what in me is being awakened here, rather than blindly succumbing to the situation? Does this longing have a lovely mask, or is it love that is hiding behind it? Since yearning is not a sinful emotion, rather, it is revered. But it is necessary to incorporate yearning. In order to avoid becoming an addiction, it is necessary for it to lead you inward rather than just outside. Furthermore, the most destructive form of addiction is the one to love. It may appear to be passion, but it is actually anguish. Although it appears to be depth, it is actually desperation. It appears to be a link, but in reality it is held captive. You did not come into this world to be a captive of your own projections. Rather, you were born to be liberated. So just pause for a bit. Take into consideration a person who once loved you so profoundly that it left you bewildered. Someone who said things like, "You changed my life," or "I've never felt this before," and then vanished entirely. Take into consideration a person that you loved with every fiber of your being and who managed to reawaken something in you that is indescribable and then destroy it. What if that individual was not going to be staying here? Suppose they were present to stir things up. What if their purpose in your life was never to make you happy, but rather to reawaken the part of you that you needed to reclaim? And what if the same thing is true for you? That someone is remembering you right now, not with resentment or without yearning, but with a peaceful gratitude. Because when they loved you, they saw a part of themselves for the first time, and even if it ended, even if it broke, it made them more entire. Because of this, that love made them more complete. And this is exactly what love does. It does not complete you. Rather, it mirrors who you are. And yet, despite having complete knowledge, in spite of everything, it is still difficult, isn't it? Because there is a part of you that still wishes love were clean, predictable, and safe, and because you still want it to be uncomplicated. You want to have faith that it is possible for someone to look at you and see you in its whole without ever flinching, never projecting, never running, and never breaking under the pressure of their own awakening. Nevertheless, it is not how love operates, at least not in the beginning. Mainly due to the fact that love must first develop into a storm before it can become a shelter. It is necessary for it to rouse the unconscious. It is necessary for it to reveal the masks. And it is necessary for it to bring up all of the shadows that have been waiting quietly in any part of your being. And if you're not prepared, if you're still concealing, and if you're still holding out hope that another person will love the pieces of you that you refuse to claim, the storm will break you entirely. However, love transforms into a divine experience if you're prepared, if you're eager to undergo transformation rather than merely being held. People fall in love with you not because you fulfill them, but rather because you disrupt them in the most essential way. This is the reason why they fall in love with you. They are drawn to it not because they are shallow, but because they are souls looking for their own lost pieces. You awaken the archetype, you reflect the ideal, you trigger the wound, and you activate the story, and they are pulled to it. You're the one who carries that piece for a little moment. The neglected parent, the idealized lover, and the sacred twin are all embodied in how you are. Because of you, they're able to enter their own little world. However, there is a price tag attached to each and every doorway, mostly due to the fact that once they pass through, once they come face to face with the aspect of themselves that was speaking to them through your presence, they no longer require the container. And in the event that they are unaware of this process, they will behave in the same manner that humans have always done when confronted with profound psychological truth. They will flee. As they depart, they will say things like, "You've changed." They will also say things like, "This isn't what I thought it was." Last but not least, they will add, "I'm just not ready." Don't get that confused with being rejected, though. Rather than being a rejection, is a discovery. This is the result of the psyche finishing its cycle. What Jung cautioned us about is that whatever is rejected from the self manifests itself as an event in the world. This indicates that the people who fall in love with you are never simply reacting to you. Rather, they are reacting to the event that you represent, which is the inward reckoning that your presence brings about. Furthermore, when they're not prepared to incorporate it, they point the finger at the trigger. You, on the other hand, were never the issue. Rather, you were the mirror. But there are instances when people choose to smash mirrors rather than confront themselves. In light of this, you need to ask yourself, are you capable of sustaining this type of love without losing who you are? Mostly due to the fact that it is enticing to become what they perceive in you, isn't it? In order to continue playing the role that they have projected, to maintain their image, whether it is to be attractive, mysterious, wise, serene, or caring, whatever their needs may be, mostly due to the fact that the instant you leave it, they start to move away from you. And you're aware of that pull. You're aware of the change in temperature. Your inner kid, who is still yearning to be selected, starts to feel anxious, starts to improve their performance, and starts to exert more effort. When you choose truth over performance, when you choose honesty over attachment, when you say, "if I must," and when you choose to be loved for a mask, this is the moment where the true transformation takes place. I would like to have no love at all shown to me, because it is only at that point that you start to make room for genuine connection. Once you have reached this point, you will send a signal to the universe, which is that you are finished being a mirror and are ready to be met. And that signal will not be responded by a large number of people, but it will be answered by those who have done the same thing, those who no longer attempt to project their soul onto your skin, those who will see you not because you are a reflection of their narrative, but because they have returned to their own. There is love that is mindful. It is not well-liked, and it is not simple to do. It is not a bright burning substance, and it dies rapidly. Not only does it go slowly, but it also builds, listens, waits, and remains. You will not be able to attract it unless you have already begun to live it within yourself. Turn your attention inward. Discover which aspects of you have captured the hearts of others. Investigate the patterns. What was it about your silence, submissiveness, spirituality, sexiness, or stoicism that made you the most loved? What kind of roles have you worked in? Additionally, what was the identity of the person who played those roles? Which part of oneself is beneath the symbol? Because when you discover that self, when you eliminate every projection, every persona, and every archetype, you start to live in your own essence. You will have attained your own potential. In addition, the kind of love that you attract shifts as a result of this. No longer do people fall in love with you because you're a perfect match for their myth. Rather, they fall in love with you because you are a perfect match for their conscience. These days, you are not a dream. Rather, you are a real presence. There is a certain kind of love that does not break when it is put under duress. Whenever the image splits, it does not disappear. Rather, it grows deeper, it expands, and it heals. You are not created for the transient worship of projection, but rather for the everlasting sanctuary of truth. This is what you were constructed for, to be known, rather than to be worshipped or admired. Not to be the missing piece of someone else's puzzle, but rather to walk beside them as they rediscover their own. There is no such thing as a screen for the unconscious cinema of another person. You cannot be considered a substitute parent. This does not mean that you are the personification of someone's ideal feminine or sacred masculine. You are a soul, complete and genuine, right here. If you live your life in accordance with that fact, you will become magnetic in a different way, one that is more profound and more subdued. You draw people not through intensity, but through presence. You attract people not through performance, but through integrity. As a result of the fact that you have already integrated the unconscious, rather than because you have awakened it. In addition, that is the most elusive form of love of all. After the storm has gone, after the myths have been dismantled, and after the illusions have been destroyed, we have arrived at the still point, which is the moment when everything has stabilized. You do not consider yourself to be a receptacle for the yearning of another person. Rather, you are your own sovereign being. And it is here in this peaceful setting that you pose the most significant question. If I am no longer performing, and if I am no longer a mirror, then who am I? Who am I when no one is looking to me for salvation? Nobody is looking to me. If I am not falling in love with someone because of the characteristics that I unintentionally represent, then who am I? The genuine genesis of the self occurs at this point, because we construct our identities based on what other people project onto us for a significant portion of our life. It is not because we choose to be the good girl, the provider, the mystery, the rebel, or the healer. Rather, it is because someone loved us in the past for being those things. Because we yearn for that affection, we hid behind the mask. We molded ourselves into something that other people could want. And as a result, we gradually lost access to the person that we were before we were required. Nevertheless, when you start to wake up and recognize the projections for what they are, you're able to reclaim all of the aspects of yourself that were concealed beneath the mask. These include the portions that were untidy the parts that were silent, the parts that were contradicting, chaotic, and uncurated. In doing so, you bring them back into the light. You tell yourself, this too is me. You tell yourself, I am not just your savior, your muse, your mother, your fantasy. I am also the one who cries, who doubts, who fails, and who feels deeply. And the instant you say that without apologizing, you restore your sense of wholeness. Mainly due to the fact that love, in its purest form, does not encourage idealization, but rather allows for integration. As a result of this, Jung looked at falling in love not as a destination, but rather as a spiritual initiation. And whether they are ready to walk that path, whether they stay or go, whether they honor it or flee from it, that is their journey. When someone is drawn to you with that fierce and irrational pull, when they say, I can't explain it, but I feel like I've known you forever, they're not just complimenting you. They're unknowingly confessing, you have activated something sacred in me. And whether they stay or leave, whether they honor it or flee from it, that is their journey. This is something that you absolutely must be aware of. Their love for you is genuine, not because it was able to be maintained, but because it was disclosed. From the perspective of other people, it revealed who you are, what you stand for, and the archetype that your soul evokes. And what's more important is that it revealed you the places where you continue to give up on yourself, where you continue to become what is required rather than what is genuine, and where you continue to give up your completeness in return for a brief sense of belonging. You no longer have to carry out that activity. You're not here to be adored by projections that are not conscious. Rather, you're here to be seen in conscious present, to be loved for your completeness rather than for the image that you bear. To be adored not only for your attractiveness, power, or mystique, but also for the humanity that you share with others. And the only way to attract that kind of love is to live it. To be the kind of person who no longer idolizes or idealizes, who no longer confuses intensity with intimacy, who can sit across from someone and say, I see the image you're projecting onto me, and I refuse to act it out, and who can maintain silence when the fantasy collapses and the real work begins is the only way to attract that kind of love. In light of the fact that love is work, not laborious work, but work that is sacred, psychological, and soul-related. Being present, having patience, having courage, and being willing to see and be seen, not only in your brightness, but also in your shade, are all necessary components. More than most people, Jung comprehended this concept. He was aware that the people that triggered you the most emotionally were the ones who mirrored what you had not yet claimed, and that falling in love is rarely about the other person. Rather, it is about the unconscious finally seeing itself in form, and the realization that it can alter the course of your life. It has the ability to reawaken you, as well as dissolve your illusions, challenge your routines, and compel you to develop emotionally. Therefore, this is the point. Because if you love with intention, each and every connection will turn into a meaningful experience for you. They show that you stop chasing people who abandon you and start listening to what their absence taught you about your own abandonment wound. At the same time, you stop demanding, why didn't they stay? And start asking, what did you no longer require the assistance of another individual to carry the picture of your soul? And you start to embody it yourself. The cycle is broken as a result of this. Is this that causes the traumatized to be broken? You go from being a passive recipient of love to being a conscious co-creator of love as a result of this transformation. Not the superficial, ego-centered love that fades away the moment reality creeps in, but the genuine love that endures disillusionment, that flourishes in truth, and that grows when the projection comes to an end. And when you love in this way, something wonderful takes place. Even if the relationship is over, the love continues to exist since it was never about control or fantasy. Awakening was the topic of discussion, because once something has been woken, it cannot be put back to sleep. When someone falls in love with you in the future, make sure you are able to see it clearly. What kind of image are they falling for? You should ask yourself. For them, what kind of energy do I represent? Are I willing to remain firmly planted in my truth, even if doing so means that the fantasy will be extinguished? Or The next time you find yourself falling in love with someone, you could inquire, what aspect of myself are they reflecting? My unconscious mind is trying to tell me what kind of image of the sacred they reflect. Would you say that I love them in a genuine way, or do I love the part of myself that I have projected onto them? The answers to these questions do not destroy romance. Rather, they elevate it. They dismantle the illusion in order to make room for the beginning of intimacy. Through their actions, they change the connection from a myth into a meeting and from a story into a safe haven. Because, in the end, love is not something that occurs to you. Rather, love is something that reveals you to both yourself and to the other person. Those individuals who find themselves falling in love with you are not merely one-time lovers. Rather, they are mirrors, messengers, and myths that have been materialized.